Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X. Tonight we are going to be talking about a British destroyer, the HMS Venomous. Of course, this is another live crossover broadcast, 3 YouTube channels, and of course the popular Museum Ships Facebook group. Let's see, as always, the people helping me tonight, we've got Shane Stevenson, curator with the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. Check out their YouTube channel, Buffalo Naval Park. Was that you?
Yeah. Because I was like peeking my head out. There we go. Doesn't matter. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Website, buffalonavalpark.org. Of course, John Epp, curator, USS Slater in Albany, New York. Check out their YouTube channel. Search for the USS Slater.
Whoa. There you go. He's faceless again.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Hello, James. Hello, Teresa.
James, All American Travels just tuned in. And of course, Connor, one of the administrators monitoring the questions and comments for us tonight. One of the administrators from the Museum Ships Facebook group. Always happy to have Connor controlling things. And like I always say, we can't do this without you guys, the subscribers and viewers. So like always, submit your comments, submit your questions. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what YouTube channel you're watching on, whether it's the Slater, the Buffalo Naval Park, or my channel, History X. Mm-hmm. All right. And as I said at the outset, we are going to be talking about the British destroyer HMS Venomous. Let's see. And to help us with that, Captain John A. I think it's pronounced Rodgaard. Retired.
Well, he's connecting now, so
I see that. Bear with me a second. I see he just logged on.
Just give us a minute.
Let's see. Doesn't look like microphone or camera are connected, but we were digging it. What?
While maybe if you ask him, like send him a message and see if you need some help. But we did also have one question already because people are talking about it. Who here has been following the Guadalcanal dives?
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Not me.
Tim told me about it yesterday. He sent me a text and he said, "Hey, the Nautilus, they're doing the Iron Bottom Sound."
Oh, okay, nice
dives.
Was interesting. Probably the most interesting thing they've discovered is they have uncovered the bow of USS New Orleans.
I think I saw something about that.
Nice.
Yeah. It hadn't been found before, and they came across it while they were moving between ships.
Let's see. It looks like Captain John Rodgaard does not have a camera or microphone connected. So, wait. That's a bummer. Okay.
Captain
all right.
John, send him a... Oh, there we go.
Hey. Hold on a second.
There we go.
Captain John, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Outstanding. Your audio is fantastic. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
Where are you connecting from?
Our home in Florida.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, happy to have you.
Melbourne, Florida.
Happy to have you join us. And you were nice enough to send a wonderful presentation about the HMS Venomous, or I should say your work on the HMS Venomous, the book. And I didn't get to that yet. The book is actually called A Hard-Fought Ship, The Story of the HMS Venomous. While we're discussing the book, if you're interested in purchasing a copy, in the link of the description of the video, no matter where you're watching from, whether it's History X, whether it's the Buffalo Naval Park, whether it's USS Slater, you will see in the description 2 links, one for the U.S. Naval Institute Press, or you can find it simply on Amazon. So check out either one of those links. But like I said a few moments ago, Captain John Rodgaard retired. Is it Rodgaard?
That's correct. It's Danish, and you wouldn't want to hear what it's pronounced like in Danish.
We're going with Rodgaard. All right. Retired.
My Danish cousins tell me that I can't even pronounce my own surname properly. So
we're going with Rodgaard.
Yeah.
And you got quite an interesting history. Let's see, 41 years with the Navy, but a 2-year stint in the Mediterranean on a destroyer escort, the USS Courtney. 1020. Yeah, DE 1021. John from the USS Slater, he's the curator on a destroyer escort from World War II. So the Courtney rings a bell for you, John?
Yeah, one of our tour guides. Actually, he's on Wednesdays. He was on the Courtney.
In fact, I met him when my wife and I were on Slater last year.
Bob, Chief Bob.
Yeah, and I offered to the ship copies of my latest book, which is titled Tail Ships.
Yes, I have a copy in my bedroom. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a pleasant surprise.
So I'm a DE sailor.
So you know Bob. Everybody knows Bob.
Well, I met him, yes.
Let's see. Well, what's cool about your history here is while you were on the Courtney, you were the CIC watch supervisor and intelligence petty officer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Our ship and our two sister ships introduced the first surface passive towed array sonar system into the fleet.
Also a graduate of the U.S. Naval War College. Mm-hmm. And as a civilian, this is another part that I find interesting. I could almost do a separate show on this. As a civilian, Captain Rodgaard, he was employed as a contract intelligence analyst, which included
imagery intelligence analyst. Yes.
Imagery intelligence analyst, which included assignments for the CIA as well as the Air Force's U-2 program.
Yes.
Like that could be a conversation in and of itself, because I love the U-2.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. And all right, you published some books. But this U-2 thing, that I find that fascinating. Let's see. So
maybe we'll have to have Captain John on at another date to discuss.
Oh, definitely. That. Yeah, definitely. But then he goes on. He's also contributed to Discovery Channel's Unsolved History. Who liked Unsolved History on the Discovery Channel? Programs like Death of the USS Arizona, Inside Hitler's Bunker, Unsolved History of Pearl Harbor, specifically the midget submarines. And so I think those were all up. Anyway, fascinating history. Now, matter of fact, Unsolved History of Pearl Harbor, the midget submarines. Did you by chance ever cross paths with Park Stevenson?
Yes, in fact, you may want to Google. It was the first episode of Nova's 2011 series, and it was titled "Killer Submarines of Pearl Harbor."
Yep. And got that here.
Myself and a team of other individuals were with Park Stevenson, and you can see that on YouTube.
How do we feel about Park Stevenson?
Be careful, John. Be careful. That's a loaded question.
No, I understand. I understand that. He does incredible work. He's worked very hard on what he's what he's been doing all these years. Mm-hmm. The conclusion in the show, myself and my dear friend Peter Sue do not agree with, but that's another story.
Mm-hmm. No, we're all fans of Parks. I was actually just talking to him last night.
Mm-hmm. But good. Well, do convey him my very best, please.
Yeah. Let's see. So you've got quite the history here. I found it pretty fascinating just digging into your experience, your history, all that stuff. So looking forward to hear what you have to say about the HMS Venomous tonight. And as I said a few moments ago, John was nice enough to provide a wonderful, here we go, wonderful presentation. And we're pretty informal here, John, but let's see, you got a few slides, and I don't know if you want to go through them in order. How did you want to handle this? What's the best way?
I can go through them in order. I've got a bit of a script, and I'll just have to ask you to, move the slides.
100%. Yeah, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Yeah, where do you want to begin?
Well, I'll start with this slide, slide 1. As you can see, there's the crest, HMS Venomous, 2 snakes and the chalice. The poison chalice, if you would. And basically, I want to talk about Venomous and valor, which was pretty much a common virtue. The Oxford Dictionary defines valor quite simply, quote, courage in the face of danger. And as for virtue, the Oxford Dictionary states, quote, behavior showing high moral standard. A morally good or desirable quality, or a good or useful quality of a thing. Can you turn it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on.
Now, 2 generations of sailors who served on Venomous exemplify the definition of valor, and as such they were very typical, common as with all of those who ever served under the White Ensign during the historically tragic and, yes, triumphal years at sea during the first half of the 20th century. Triumphal because our world would look a lot different had the Royal Navy lost. They also shared a common understanding that all sailors have of the inherent danger of being at sea. That sea is remorseless in its leveling of human vanity. I believe that all of you would agree with me on that.
In this image here, you said we're talking about 2 generations.
That's right. In fact, the center photograph was just taken after Venomous was placed into commission in 1919. And the photos at the edges are of some of the men who served in her during the Second World War.
Okay, got it.
Next one, please.
Yep. And this is a pretty cool photo, I think.
Yeah, if you would, click again because there's photos inside. Oh, no, you have to go back. I'm sorry.
Oh, wait a second. There's photos. Oh,
yeah,
shoot.
That's the last one on that slide.
Oh, I apologize. I don't know if I got the other images in there.
Okay. Well,
let's see if I can work some magic.
Anyway, what I can say is this photograph was taken in 1919. The destroyer in the foreground is HMS Venomous. This is at John Brown's shipyard on the Clyde outside of Glasgow. And you could see another destroyer, one of her sisters, being fitted out. And do you know what that large ship in the background is?
Is that the Hood?
That's Hood.
I thought so. Yeah, leave it to the Canadian to recognize Hood.
Well done. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada.
Thank you.
I can only say that, ironically, Venomous was escorting a convoy, an eastbound convoy, when the evening before, her men witnessed Hood and her 6 destroyers and Prince of Wales racing westward. And the next morning they would engage Bismarck and Prince Eugen. So here she is in the fitting out basin, and there is Hood. Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can pull up the other pictures.
Because it shows Venomous. It shows her as she was initially fitted out.
All right, hold on a second. Let me see it. Let me see if I can do this. I apologize. I totally missed that.
Yeah, because I have several of the slides have embedded other images as well. So
you got stuff. All right, hold on a second. Let's see.
Whoop. There we go. That's the first one. Now, it's a testament of the quality of the ship. Venomous and her sisters were the latest in a series of 23 separate class names and 18 distinct classes of destroyers built for the Royal Navy between 1906 and 1920. And when she was commissioned in 1919, Venomous was the most advanced destroyer in the world. The Venomous was common in that she was one of 67 of her extended class, the largest number of destroyers ever built for the Royal Navy. Now, to Rudyard Kipling, Venomous and her sisters were the epitome of what a destroyer was. In his poem, The Destroyers, his poetic license saw this type of ship as the, quote, flash, dash, and boom of naval warfare. To him, they were, quote, the maidens of the slain. Yeah, he definitely had a turn of word, didn't he? Venomous was common among her sisters in that regard. She was sleek, as you can see, possessing a handsome hull line, and she had speed. She was, and her principal weapon was the torpedo, which carried quite a boom. They were 6 21-inch torpedoes.
But was it designed that way? What was it, 1919? Or actually probably designed.
Right. Well, you think about it, those destroyers were the latest design to support the Grand Fleet in the North Sea. So her principal weapon were torpedoes, but she had a very heavy main armament of 4.7-inch guns, which were pretty advanced for the time.
We were just talking before the show, and I was explaining that before the First World War, destroyers had been more closer to torpedo boats, and then as World War I progressed, they started becoming more and more closer to what we now recognize as a classic destroyer, being more this style than the more traditional torpedo boat look.
Well, yeah, see that.
I'm surprised to hear you say, though, it was still kind of I don't know what's the right word, like focused, torpedo focused rather than
right. Well, naval. the idea at the time, and if you look at the Battle of Jutland, the destroyers were in flotillas, mass flotillas, and they were sent out to attack the opposing battle lines, as well as to interrupt the enemy's destroyer flotillas as they were coming in to attack. So the principal weapon, yes, were the torpedoes against the battle line, but had gun armament to be able to defend against destroyers coming in against their own battle line. So yes. Can you see what the next slide looks like?
Yeah, so the next one
right there.
This is the one we were just talking about.
So there she is. That's her right there in the lower right being fitted out. And in June of 1919, she was commissioned. And if you could go to the next page, please.
Bear with me a moment. And
yeah, I've got several in there. There she is. Now, Venomous in the 1920s and her ship's company were very busy. Within the first few months after her commissioning, she was directed to join the Forgotten Fleet, the Baltic Squadron under then Admiral Conan. And we see through such men as Midshipman Renthro Gatto, who was thankful to be in the ship's warm engineering room after having spent hours on the ship's exposed bridge during the latter days of a typical Baltic and Gulf of Finland autumn. Now, she and her sisters, together with light cruisers, comprised as well as a couple of large 15-inch gun monitors, were engaged in supporting the Finns, Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians, keeping off the Bolshevik Red Army, as well as freebooting German divisions. Through their efforts, they ensured that Latvia, Finland, and Estonia and Lithuania were free from those control until obviously the Second War. But yes, she was there. In fact, if you could see what the next photographs look like.
Is that the one in the ice?
Yeah.
Real quick though, why was it so this Baltic assignment? Why did it get called the Forgotten Fleet?
Well, it was pretty much brushed over. Think about our own U.S. Navy's experiences up in the Kola Peninsula, as well as in the Pacific off of Vladivostok. It's, I would say, kind of not many people know about what transpired.
Not glamorous duty is.
It wasn't glamorous, but boy, yeah. It was eventful to say the least.
Copy that. All right, this is the picture you're talking about.
Yeah, that is like in November of 1920.
I like the coats they're wearing. Holy.
Oh yeah. How about the next one?
Hold on a second. That is. Let's see.
There's her open bridge, and by the way, that isn't metal. What you see is basically matting. So that bridge is thoroughly, completely exposed. So you can imagine with this young Renthro Gatto. Oh, by the way, he was a midshipman at the time. Fast forward to May of 1940. Did you ever see the movie Dunkirk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Kenneth Branagh plays this commander on the bridge, on the breakwater in Dunkirk, and he leans over and he says, "I'm waiting for I forget his line, but anyway, he was actually Renthro Gatto, who by that time was a commander in the Royal Navy and was on that breakwater when his old ship Venomous came in to pull off men off from Dunkirk." Talk about irony.
Yeah. No
So anyway, next one, please.
Next one coming up.
There she is. Now she would spend the rest of her active service being placed. She would, after coming back from the Baltic, she was spent about 6 months or so off of what is now called, well, it was called Queenstown, which is near, down in Kerry in Ireland. And she was a guard ship during the Irish Civil War. But after that, she spent the rest of her time, up until 1929, in the Mediterranean. And that is a photograph of some of her ship's company. I think actually it's her stokers, the Black Gang, when they came back from the Baltic. That's a pretty cool photograph.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, have any of these individuals ever been identified, or?
No, I haven't been able to do that. I mentioned about Raithro Gatto. I have his reminiscence about his time on Venomous, and it's part of the research material that I have. Anyway, so joining the Mediterranean Fleet, if you go to the next one, please. Here she is in Malta. She would spend the rest of her active service before being placed in reserve in what the Mediterranean is called Mare Nostrum. Yeah, when she was placed in reserve, she was only 10 years old. Now the ship was involved with the Mediterranean Fleet in exercises, torpedo exercises. Oh, by the way, the Royal Navy used to fire torpedoes and guns at each other. Okay? We're talking about that's how they trained.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a destroyer on destroyer, each ship would fire their guns in the wake of the opposite. That's how they would compete against one another. And they would actually use dummy torpedoes to fire at each other. So
it was never live, but
no, it was never. Well, no, the ordnance, the shells were live.
But not the torpedoes.
No, the torpedoes were dummies.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, she was also she acted as a plane guard for such aircraft carriers as HMS Furious, HMS Eagle. Whoops. There she is. That's a good picture. There she is in exercises, laying smokescreen. So they were literally doing combat exercises in the Mediterranean during the period of the time that she was there. Now, I was fortunate to acquire from the National Museum of the Royal Navy's library a diary by an unknown man who was a stoker, a leading petty officer in HMS Venomous, an engineman. And he wrote about the exercises, the boredom. He was a married man who had been away basically for 3 years from his wife and children who were back in England. He was stationed on Venomous, going in and out of Malta. And she was at the time showing the flag. He wrote about how they would go around the Mediterranean in we call the spring, summer, and autumn cruising cycles, going to Turkey, going to Greece, going to Italy, going to Spain, going to France, going to Egypt. In fact, Venomous had gone into the Red Sea, in which she was conducting anti-slavery patrols, in which Arabs were enticing African Muslims to come to Saudi Arabia under the guise of going to Mecca, and they were enslaving them. And the Royal Navy was attempting to intercept that trade, and Venomous was part of that. So that came from that gentleman's book, and to this day, I have no idea who he was. No one does, but it's a beautiful piece of work. What's fascinating also is that he accounts the 2 suicides that were on the ship. As you can imagine, life was, being in the Med was great. Believe me, I spent 2 years in the Med, and it was an incredible experience. But it could be hard. And there were instances in which, as I mentioned, suicides. And we're talking about by some senior, one chief petty officer was found hanging in the chief's room. Things were, what can I say?
Yeah.
But anyway, she was placed in reserve, and if you would, the next one, with little hope of ever coming back into service. There's an example of torpedo exercises. Next. Okay, back again. go ahead. Go keep on running
Let's
through
see
it.
here. Bear with me a second.
Yeah, here's exercises to show you how things got. Collisions occurred. Here's a British light cruiser that rammed a destroyer during their close drills. That's how they played for real.
Wow. Yeah.
Next.
Guess so. Let's see. All right, moving on. That is going to be.
Yep, the next one.
Oh, okay.
Of course, the lazy, hazy days in Malta. So I love that photograph.
We were talking about this one before we went live. Would these be officers?
Yeah, there are 2 junior officers, right?
Junior JG. Okay.
Yeah, 2 junior officers, probably a sub-lieutenant and possibly a midshipman. Now, in the Royal Navy, the Royal Canadian, as you'll know, Connor, midshipman is equivalent to an ensign, and a sub-lieutenant is equivalent to a lieutenant junior grade.
Okay.
And then that's when we all start even. Now, but in 1939, Venomous, as with Winston Churchill, who became First Lord of the Admiralty, was back. Now, the second generation of men who brought the ship back to life consisted of regular Navy, reservists, hostilities only men, as well as recalled retired men. Many of them had served in the Great War. Her first commanding officer was Lieutenant Commander Donald McIntyre, who was the same officer who became a very noted U-boat hunter and also one of the Royal Navy's post-war historians. And he assumed the command in July of 1939. And by the end of August, he felt confident that all was ready. But his initial impression upon seeing her was telling. You can click.
Well, I got a quick question though. So when the ship was reactivated, is that where the D-75 came from?
Yes.
Okay, so it was before that. It was a G designation.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. Very good observation. Anyway, as he said, my gloom returned when I sought out from amongst the mass of old V&W destroyers lying in the dockyard basin in there. My gloom returned when I cited the practical this particular old warrior that had been selected for me. Now, he had just come from a modern destroyer as an executive officer, and so his first command of a destroyer was good old Venomous. Now, others were less generous, I was able to acquire so much information. I can talk about how that came about, because that's pretty important. But anyway, able seaman Harold Napton said, quote, "What a ship to look at," he wrote to his wife. And his messmate, able seaman Barnfeld, wrote on the back of a Venomous postcard, which I have. And he wrote to his wife, "This is the old tub." Now, events moved very quickly, and at 1100 hours on 3 September, Prime Minister Chamberlain announced that Britain was now at war. And so McIntyre's old warrior. Now, his account about what transpired that morning is pretty sobering and timeless. He mustered the ship's company on the quarterdeck, Venomous's quarterdeck, and in the tried tradition of the Royal Navy and the Royal Canadian Navy, Connor, McIntyre read the Articles of War to them. And upon completion of reciting the Articles of War, he then told the men to fall out and carry on their normal duties. A little different. Britain is now at war. Next.
Yep.
This one thing I did notice was it sounds like they were already getting her ready before the official declaration of war.
Yes.
So it kind of just goes to show that the Royal Navy was prepping. They could see what was coming.
Absolutely.
In some way. They knew they would need ships like this pretty quick. Yeah,
in fact, that is a great photograph. There are 3 of her fellow V&Ws leaving Harwich, and this is a photograph taken from her. You could see the signal lamp from the Captain D of the destroyers. That was HMS Keith. It's important. We'll continue on a little bit more, and you'll get the relationship. But yeah, the Royal Navy was ready, as they were ready in 1914.
This is a picture taken from Venomous, not of Venomous. So that's not okay. Gotcha. All right.
Right. And here she is entering a Harwich. She and destroyer squadron or flotilla 19 were based in Harwich at the beginning of the war.
Excuse me.
Now let's just jump forward in time 85 years ago in May, in June of 1940. And I've selected this moment because during this time, the ship's fate and that of her men, and all of Britain for that matter, hung on a thread. Venomous was in Portsmouth for repairs after being in a serious collision with a tugboat and missed the catastrophic Norwegian campaign. Now a new commanding officer took her, Lieutenant Commander John Macbeath, who was a career Royal Navy officer who was born in South Africa. He had joined the Royal Navy in 1907. His father lied his son's age, his stepson's age. John Macbeath was only 14. Actually, he was 13 when he went to the Royal Navy as an enlisted sailor.
Wow.
When you could only go into the Royal Navy as a boy sailor at the age of 16. So anyway, John Macbeath had been in the Royal Navy from 1907, and by 1939, he was a very experienced destroyerman. Now, he would see this old girl and her men through some of the extremely dangerous time. And on 2 May, Macbeath took Venomous back out on routine East Coast convoy escort work. And this continued for only 1 week, when a message reached her to abandon her convoy and race to Dover. The Battle of France had begun. And for the next 24 days, Venomous and her sisters would make countless dashes across the channel. And she came close to being sunk by the Luftwaffe on more than one occasion. Can I have the next, please?
Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah, just go. Yeah, and hit it. There we go. Now,
Okay.
on 11 May, Macbeath took her to the Dutch coast to pick up a Dutch military mission to liaise with the British Expeditionary Force. Back to Dover that night, the ship was ordered to embark 100 Royal Marines and take them to the Hook of Holland so that the Marines could destroy the dock works at the Hook of Holland. Click it again.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
Now, that morning, she experienced her first bombing. And as Abel James Eaton said after one such Stuka attack, with bombs exploding within feet, quote, "I thought we were goners." But another said she was a tough old bird. Yes, but she had an able skipper. Macbeath was a brilliant tactician and a real incredible ship handler. And his innate tactical skills was able to maneuver just in time as the bombs came in. And at the same time, she shot down her first attacking aircraft. Now, returning to Harwich on the 12th, Venomous was in port for just a day when Macbeath was ordered to assume the North Godwin Patrol. Can you put that up? There we go.
Okay.
So you could see she was going back and forth in the lower reaches of the North Sea. Mm-hmm. Now, getting underway on the 14th, Venomous and her sister assumed the patrol with the purpose of intercepting German mine-laying operations and rendering assistance to vessels in distress. Can you go to the next one, please?
Sure thing. Let's see here.
You
right
can
here?
see right here.
Okay.
On the morning of 15 May, now go to the next one.
You got it.
A small boat crowded with people flying a Dutch flag was spotted dead in the water. Coming alongside, Venomous took aboard 46 men and women. 42 of them were German and Dutch Jews fleeing the Nazis.
Nice.
Once on board, Macbeath ordered able seaman Napton and another able seaman and a stoker to take charge of the boat. Macbeath asked Napton if he knew where Ramsgate was, and Napton said yes and pointed in the general direction. Good, said Macbeath, and off Napton and his 2 shipmates went. The little Dutch lifeboat, named Zeemanshoop, which means Seaman's Hope, made it to Ramsgate and survived the war. Can you go to the next one, please?
Yep.
There they are. Next. In 2005, she was present at a reunion of the children and grandchildren of those who were rescued.
Wait. Hold on a second. Are you saying that is that?
Yes.
Wow.
How the heck did they fit that many people
You
on that?
gotta be kidding me.
She was 15. She's 15 meters. She's still with us. She's a museum ship now with the Royal Dutch Lifeboat Service, and she served for a few years after the war as a lifeboat. Yeah, she's only 15 meters long, and she had a two-stroke gasoline engine.
I'm sorry, say again. How many people were on
15
board?
meters.
No. How many
were on board?
people?
45.
45.
And that included the 4 Dutch teenagers that acquired her. They had every intent to going down to lower part of Holland to fight the Germans. But what transpired, that all these people were at the quayside, and they allowed them to come aboard.
When you say
That she was
acquired
terribly
her, do you mean
overloaded.
they stole the boat?
Yeah, they stole the boat. Yeah.
Do we know who the original owners were?
Oh, well, it was the Dutch Lifeboat Service.
Oh,
Good work, John, because I didn't put 2 and 2 together, so I'm glad you said so.
So 4 teenagers decided to go to war, stole a boat, and end up transporting, 41 refugees.
Yep.
Wow.
There they are there.
That's
And, oh, by the way, the youngest was 16, the eldest was 18. And at that when you go to see the photograph, 2 of the boys that are on that boat were on the boat 80 years earlier were still alive. The lady in the middle, she is, whoop.
Oh, you're not talking about this picture?
No.
Okay, hold on a second. Bear with me.
Go with the new photograph and go to the next one.
There.
Okay, the lady in the middle, she is a member of the House of Lords. Her last name is Hennick, Dame Hennick. That's her children and grandchildren. She was at the time in her mother's womb when her mother and father were rescued by Venomous.
Wow.
In May of 2015 was a huge reunion of the descendants of those individuals. 150 of them attended, and there's the little lifeboat. And it was an incredible experience. My wife and I were there, and the Royal Navy provided a little patrol boat to represent Venomous. And they came from all over the world. There were descendants from Australia, Canada, Texas, Oregon, England, France.
So you said 150 attended, but how many descendants are there from?
They were all descendants of those people.
Yeah, do you know how many there are? I mean, so the people in this boat right here resulted in how many descendants?
Well, a minimum of 150.
Well, yeah.
Yes, at least 150.
At least 150. That's right.
Good work. Okay.
So why was this boat dead in the water when Venomous pulled?
She broke down.
Oh yeah,
broke down because of the. Okay.
She broke down, and also, according to 2 of the old boys, it was a combination of they ran out of gas, tried to start it, just couldn't do it. Plus, they had a bit of she broke down because she ran out of petrol.
Sure.
So what transpired was they loaded her up with gas, and those 3 sailors took her to England, where she survived the war.
That is
there she is.
Story. That's a great story.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, if you can go on now.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry to hijack that, but that's a great story.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Someone just said here the Royal Navy patrol boat at the reunion was HMS Trumpeter.
That's correct. Oh, that's my wife, Judy Pearson.
Okay.
She's
Hi, Judy. Nice to meet you.
She's up at her home. She's up in her home in Burke, Virginia. We split our time between the houses. Well, anyway, after that, Venomous comes back with the refugees, and she was given less than 24 hours to recover. And then for the next 40 hours, she was in continuous operations. And during the night of 17-18 May, she was back on the North Godwin Patrol. She continued patrolling through the 20th of May with a very brief returns to Dover. And it was this time that she was attacked by mine-carrying aircraft on 3 separate occasions. Go ahead and hit.
Yeah, that's this picture right here.
Yeah, those seaplanes. She came very close to being sunk. One of those mines exploded about 10 feet astern of her.
Oh,
But to
no
show you
damage.
how the ship was so well built, she suffered nothing from that explosion. Oh, by the way, she did shoot that aircraft down, so she had her second kill.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you said like in this particular situation, the mines or the bombs were. It doesn't sound like Venomous ever took any direct hits to this point.
That's correct.
Okay.
A lot of splintering, but and no one hurt. Anyway, what transpired next? With the situation in France deteriorating, the War Office informed Vice Admiral Bertram Ramsay to begin planning for the evacuation of the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, under Operation Dynamo. Ironically, it would be Admiral Ramsay and his staff who put the plans together for Operation Neptune, the seaborne operation for Overlord, 4 years later. So Ramsay is one of the I would consider forgotten geniuses of the Royal Navy. Anyway, what happened was, and on the 21st of May, go ahead and go again, Venomous was back out again, and this time to Calais. And there's a Stuka. Stuka almost hit her too.
Okay.
We're at its bombs. All right, next one, please.
Here we go.
Right. On 21 May, Venomous was back again, and this time to Calais to evacuate Royal Navy personnel and their secret ASW equipment. It was called the Sanguet Submarine Detection Station. There was a passive system that had wires strung across that part of the English Channel, and they were basically passive ASW detection. As a submarine would travel over it, it was basically a MAD device, a magnetic anomaly detector. And it was quite a secret. And so Venomous was able to pull all of that instrumentation out and return to Britain. Now, she took on board Anglo-French citizens living within the Calais area. And this was executed while Calais was being bombed. So another near miss for her. Next one, please.
Let's see.
There she is taking some of the Dutch as well as British officers and enlisted personnel off. Now, the next one, please.
Yep.
The War Office decided that Calais and Boulogne should be reinforced so that both ports could be used as evacuation points. And it was decided that the 20th Guards Brigade, consisting of the 2nd Battalion Welsh Guards and the 2nd Battalion Irish Guards and supporting elements, under the command of Brigadier W.H. Foxpitt, British Army. That is a photograph, you go to the next one, of refugees coming out of the boxcars to go on board Venomous. And this was at Calais, whilst Calais was being attacked. You can see that lady coming off has been hurt in the head and her hand.
Wow.
Next, please.
All right.
Okay, so on the 22nd, Venomous escorted the SS Mona Queen with elements of that brigade. Whilst the guards landed, Venomous took on board 200 refugees, to include 4 French nuns and their 23 schoolgirls. And she escorted the Mona Queen and refugees back to Britain that evening. Unfortunately, Mona Queen was sunk on one of its rescue missions to Dunkirk a few days later.
Oh,
Next,
really?
please.
Huh.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at this picture real quick. I mean, what is this? Is this a ferry boat that we're looking at?
Yeah, she's a cross-channel ferry boat.
Okay.
The Mona Queen. Yep.
Gotcha. All right. You said next.
There in Boulogne is the Mona Queen, and there are elements of the 20th Guards Brigade. And that photograph is taken from Venomous.
And that's the Mona Queen right there.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's the Mona Queen.
Gotcha. All right.
Next.
And we're still in Calais?
No, we're in Boulogne. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Sorry.
She took the 20th Guards Brigade to Boulogne, where the Guards Brigade, the 2 battalions plus light anti-tank guns, were set to establish a perimeter on the outside of the town, and allowing British forces and French forces to filter through Boulogne and be taken off. But things didn't exactly go to plan. Here she is leaving Boulogne on that day. Okay, next one.
All right.
Now this painting, which is kind of a romanticized painting, if you would, by the end of the day, the guards formed a defensive perimeter outside the town. However, this lightly armed brigade became hard-pressed by advancing panzer forces, led by, it wasn't led by Rommel, but one of his subordinates. And with the morning of the 23rd, the British were forced through the town towards the port. It was street fighting with panzers and supporting infantry, methodically going house to house and capturing the surrounding hillsides. Boulogne is like a V. You've got hills around it, and Boulogne comes in. Now, by the afternoon of the 23rd, the guardsmen had retreated across the swing bridge that connected the eastern part of the town from the principal port area on the west bank of the river. This painting is notable, and it's from the Welsh Guards, which is in their headquarters. Shows Brigadier Fox Pitt, Lieutenant Colonel Stanier, commanding the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards, and his deputy commander, Major Jones Mortimer, directing the withdrawal to a railway ferry station. Now, in the background, this is Venomous firing her guns into the town and the surrounding hillside. You could just barely see above the gentleman's helmet on the upper left. See?
Yep.
It's supposedly to be Venomous. Next, please.
Yep. Let's see here.
Now, with the guard situation and becoming very desperate, the War Office directed Admiral Ramsay to pull the guards out of Boulogne. Now, at 1747, Macbeth received the following signal from Vice Admiral, and she is an addee to this message: to Destroyer 19, to the squadron commander, with HMS, the sister ships, Westshard, Vimy, Venetia, Venomous, from Vice Admiral, that's from Ramsay. Inform Buttercup, evacuation all troops as soon as practicable. Use destroyers and Vimera joining you, Wild Swan later. Those are all V&W class destroyers that now have been ordered to go into Boulogne and rescue the 20th Guards Brigade. Next.
Well, hold on a second. Who was Buttercup and who was Wild Swan?
Okay, Buttercup was the collective name for Destroyer 19, Flotilla 19.
Okay.
Wild Swan was actually one of the V&W class destroyers. The Royal Navy had tremendous names for their ships. Look, Vimera, Wild Swan, Withshed, Venetia, Venomous, Vimy. Incredible names. You can look them up. It's fantastic, the names they had for their ships.
Well, and someone made a comment. Britain loved the intimidating names. Yeah.
But also think of, and Connor, you'll know this, the Royal Canadian Navy and their equivalency of the Flower class corvettes.
Yep.
Could you imagine being on a corvette? HMS Daisy.
Yeah.
HMS Tulip. Okay.
One of my personal favorites, HMS Periwinkle.
Yeah, there's Periwinkle. That's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the fictitious Compass Rose.
Yeah. On that topic, I am really happy that when Canada started building Flower class corvettes, we decided to name them after towns instead of. So that's how we ended up with a ship called Sackville, which is still around today. The last of
she's
the Flower class
incredible.
corvettes.
My wife and I had an opportunity to be aboard her in 2012.
Oh, very nice.
I was giving a talk on one. In fact, I gave a talk at the museum on Venomous. On one ship.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
and you said that was 2012, and your book on Venomous, I think John had said, came out in 2010.
Well, right. The first edition came out in 2010.
Okay.
The next one, because there was such a response, came out in 2017, and the one that you have was reprinted last year by Seaforth, and it's a tribute to my dear friends, Lieutenant Commander Robert Moore, who was commanding officer of the Royal Navy Sea Cadet Unit training ship Venomous. And he was the one, in 1990, he was so fascinated by the ship's history that he produced this monograph, A Hard-Fought Ship.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from that we became very good friends, that Bob was going to write a full-blown history of the ship, because from that time, 1990, up until 2005, he received such tremendous response, photographs, all kinds of incredible first-hand accounts from men who were still alive who served on Venomous. And he had every intention of putting a book together. Unfortunately, Bob died. He was a marathon runner, but he died of a massive heart attack after one of his runs in 2007. And my wife and I went back to Loughborough in England, with the town that he came from, which is just outside of Leicester, for a Trafalgar night dinner. And in 2007, and we met his publisher, who was his name was William Foster. And William was the gentleman who was going to publish the book. But he gave the book to me, the responsibility of the book. And Judy and I returned that October after we were involved with the Trafalgar 200 at the Painted Hall. And I met with Bob's widow and brought back 40 pounds of material that he collected since 1990 that was going to be the genesis of that book. And that book came out right here in 2010.
That's okay. So that was I guess you could say
this
the first.
Is what I wrote. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in 2017, because there was such a response, Bill Foster and I decided, let's put another edition. So this book has 300 pages plus. The book that you're showing has 500.
Wow. So I just had a question about, kind of like the style. Now, we've talked to a lot of authors this year, and we're happy to be working with Sam and the Naval Institute Press.
Yes.
And, we hear that time and again, that once the word starts to spread that someone's going to write about a particular subject, they just get a flood of archival materials from family members.
Correct.
How do you do that? Like, do you publish in, I'm writing a book on HMS Venomous, and do you put it in like a Tin Can Sailor newsletter, or like, how do you get the word out that you're looking for?
Well, it was Bill Foster. Bill Foster, Shane, was very much responsible for that. He was he had retired from being the president of the University of Hertfordshire Press. He was the president of that university press for 25 years. So he really knew the book business, if you would, and research, and he publicized. It was Bill who was able to organize that incredible reunion in Holland for the rescue of the Zeemanschule. So the word got out that way, and plus there had been contacts that Bob Moore had acquired and kept as well. So yeah, that's how it really got about. It was primarily out of England, out of Britain, and from there, bits and pieces in Europe. So that's how the word got out.
For those of you that are just joining us, tonight we've been talking to Captain John Rodgaard, author of A Hard-Fought Ship, about the HMS destroyer HMS Venomous. Mm-hmm. And all right, I want to see if I want to get you back to because I kind of sidetracked you with.
That's fine. Well, it was important also to get an understanding of the genesis of all this.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate that Bill Foster thought enough of me to, Bill Foster, to pick up Bob Moore's shield, if you would, and to write about this incredible ship.
Yeah.
Where we had left off was here.
Right here. Yes, if you would go on to the next one, please. I mean, that just shows you that came from a family member. Their father was the telegraphist on board Venomous and kept many of the messages that Venomous received. And there's a couple of more I've got here. Now, anyway, with the situation becoming very desperate, as I mentioned, Admiral Ramsey ordered those ships to go to Boulogne to pull the guards out. Now, Captain Simpson, who was Captain B of Destroyer Flotilla 19, was on the scene, and he directed HMS Vimy to follow him. The flagship was HMS Keith, into Boulogne. Lieutenant Commander Donald commanded Vimy. His son, at the time, was about 8 months in his mother's womb when this occurred. We know Frank Donald, very well. Frank was retired from the Royal Navy as a lieutenant commander, and I'm not sure if he's still with us, but he gave us some really incredible information. And if you go on to that, this is a beautiful rendition by my dear friend Peter Sue, who is one of our Navy's premier naval architects, but he also is a tremendous artist. He does all the official paintings for our commissionings.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, that's all right. That's Venomous. What transpired was that during the 1700 hours, Venomous joined 5 other of the VMWs and 5 French destroyers who had been engaging German army units along the French coast. And shortly after joining the group, the destroyers were attacked by 60 Stuka dive bombers.
Oh.
One French destroyer was hit amidships and disintegrated in a massive explosion, whilst a second was hit and sunk as well. Now, the British destroyers were not hit, but as with Venomous, suffered numerous near misses with subsequent showering of bomb splinters. Venomous suffered her first casualties. 3 of her ratings received minor wounds from shrapnel. With Macbeth and Angus Mackenzie, there's the next one, you'll see this. There's John Macbeth on the right, and there's his number 1. And oh, by the way, Connor, Angus Macbeth, oh gosh, I just lost his name. Angus came from Halifax.
Okay, it's Canadian.
And his family, his daughter is still very much with us, and obviously his grandchildren. So Angus Mackenzie. In fact, the ship's company called him in a very loving way, Bloody Mackenzie. I'm sorry. After the war, he emigrated to Canada, but he was from Scotland.
Oh, okay. So he really wasn't a Canadian.
Yeah. Well.
Eventually he was.
Anyway,
that was the gentleman on the left you were just mentioning?
Yeah, that was the gentleman on the left. He became a well-known destroyer captain himself. He had tremendous exploits in the Mediterranean on one of the much newer destroyers. And you could see he's in the reserve Navy. He was in the Wavy Navy. And it was pretty unusual to have Wavy Navies in command of such ships, new destroyers. By 1943, he had his own command. And of course, John Macbeth wound up becoming one of the Royal Navy's great destroyer captains. There's much more to tell about him, but it's not part of this. Anyway, so what happened was, if you go to the next one.
You got it. Let's see here.
This is a photograph taken from Venomous. Excuse me. The flotilla leader is going in, and then the ship on the left is HMS Vimy. And they were the first ones into the harbor to pull the guards out of the port. Now, the Germans, you could see the shoreline and see how high up that is. They were holding all the high ground. Now, as Keith and Vimy, they were able to pull off several hundred men, but both ships were badly shot up, with Captain Simon and Lieutenant Donald both killed by German snipers. They were on their open bridge. HMS Keith and Vimy, as they were leaving, as one of the sailors on Venomous reported, blood was running down the sides of their ship from all the casualties suffered from being hit by German small arms, automatic fire, as well as artillery. So that wasn't exactly a very good start. So
yeah, and as you pointed out earlier, open bridges.
that's right. Now you see all the men, so that you had their guns, their main armament, plus pom-pom guns, and the British sailors had Lewis guns, Enfield rifles, and Bren guns as well. So they weren't exactly, taking it. They were firing back. In fact, you'll see what happens next. So next it was Venomous and her sister ship Wild Swan and Venetia's turn to go in to Boulogne. Can you go to the next one, please? Now this is a hand-drawn map by Venomous's chief ordnance artificer, Hugh McGinney, and it shows the positions of the three destroyers. Wild Swan entered first and positioned herself on the west side of the railway station building. So she was blocked from Germans in the park and trees and on the hillside. But Venomous came in second, and Macbeth, rightly seeing the tactical situation, ignored the army's direction to pull alongside Wild Swan, but instead came alongside at this point there. This quick thinking gave all of his ship's main battery open firing arcs, as well as his men manning 2 pom-pom guns, several Lewis and Bren guns, with other sailors with their Enfield rifles. Now the reason for a lull in the fighting, because they were able to come in. Now you can see the third ship in the drawing, HMS Venetia. There was a lull in the fighting.
The Venetia, that's the one on the top, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The Germans stopped firing. And they were occupying the high ground with artillery and small arms weapons, plus snipers were in the park and trees. Germans were on the buildings, and you'll see photographs of this. The Germans had occupied the fort overlooking the harbor, and the infantry had taken up positions, as I mentioned, the buildings along the river, and snipers were positioned in the park. The snipers who killed Captain Simon and Lieutenant Commander Donald and others on board. Now, as Venetia was approaching, the Germans opened up. And Venetia was struck on her bridge and the forward guns, killing and wounding the entire bridge staff and also the gunners on the first 2 guns forward, A and B mounts. Now, the ship began to lose control. It was only for this young man, a young midshipman, who was on the after end. He was responsible for the after guns. He came forward, saw the situation, and what he did next, which saved Venomous and Wild Swan, as well as 1,000 or more guardsmen. All the valor that those ships and men put out would have been naught, except for this young 18-year-old midshipman. His name was David Jones. What he did, next please, that it gives you an idea of how close quarters are. Look at the woods on the right. This photograph was taken about 10 years ago.
Oh, this is the channel.
This is the river. Yep.
Because you look at this sketch, you look at this map, if you will, and it's almost like, for a destroyer, it's almost suicide because there's no maneuvering room.
That's correct.
It's almost like a submarine heading into like 100 feet of water.
You can say that. Now, if you look back at the photograph.
I don't know if I want to go back to the photograph. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, see how narrow that is. It's literally,
you see those small boats.
Yeah.
That's where Venomous tied up. Now, this is at low tide, and this is also something very important. There's the woods. There's the ferry terminal, because there's a cross-channel ferry system from France to England. Next, please.
Yep. There we go.
This photograph was taken by a sailor from HMS Wild Swan, which is in the foreground. Now, she's on the other side of that railway terminal. The smoke you see is Venetia with young Midshipman Jones steering her, commanding her out of the harbor.
Wow.
Yep. So he quickly ordered the ship's engines in reverse and piloted her out of the channel, traveling astern under fire.
Oh,
heading
out backwards?
Yeah, backwards.
Heading out to sea backwards.
Right. His action prevented her from being sunk and blocking the channel. Now, unfortunately, young Jones would be killed when Venetia struck a mine in the Thames estuary later that summer. Can you go to the next, please?
Was
Thames
awarded any medals for this?
John McBeath received the Distinguished Service Order. Others received distinguished. Well, yeah, he got the DSC. I'm not sure. Midshipman Jones died before something could have been awarded to him, but I know he was certainly mentioned in dispatches.
Man,
now if you go to the next one,
yep,
this photograph was taken from Venomous.
Wow.
She came under concentrated fire from the opposite shore. With guardsmen coming aboard, the ship was being hit by machine gun and small arms fire. And seeing that heavy artillery fire that shot up Venetia was coming from the fort above on the hillside, McBeath ordered the main battery of the 4.7s to open up on the fort. The first salvo went over the fort, but the second blew the walls off the fort and sending the guns tumbling down from their positions. Venomous's main battery then fired on scattered a German artillery battery that was setting up near the fort. And at the same time, with only one operational pom-pom gun, the other one jammed, it cleared German snipers who were hidden in the trees and took out probably those snipers that had killed so many on board Keith and Vimy. Anyway, on the gun.
Hold on a second. I got a question. I got to go back. So the trees were
right there where you see.
Yeah. And then going back to this picture here, this was on the other side then, because this is all.
No, the trees are to the left.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the trees would be to the left.
Right. So you see that portion of where you've got the quay wall there in the photograph. All those buildings which are still there were right. Yes, where you have your arrow.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's how close things are.
That's basically point blank range.
Yeah, no kidding.
Point blank range.
Yeah. Jeez.
So anyway, once they took care of the fort and that German gun battery, her McBeath. Now here we've got hundreds of guardsmen are coming on board the ship. Oh, the tide is going out. The tidal range at Boulogne is 20 feet. So Venomous is slowly going down, and which actually protected her. And the guardsmen are climbing down onto her. The guns are firing. Her main battery now is being directed at tanks and infantry that are coming through the main street. In fact, Venomous is the first that I know of, recorded naval history, to fire against armor over open sights. And as the Welsh Guards War Diary said, there's nothing like a 4.7-inch gun as an anti-tank weapon.
That's pretty good.
So anyway,
hold on a second. I mean, this obviously wasn't a quick operation because you're talking about the tide affecting the height of the ship.
The tide was on its way out when Venomous went in.
Yeah,
but it was only alongside for 20 minutes.
That's it?
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So anyway,
that's still a long time.
You better believe it's a long time. I'll go into the next one.
Sure.
Okay, there's the park with some of the British equipment on fire, and there you could see some of the buildings being hit with Venomous' small arms fire. And of course, as the guardsmen were coming on board, many of them were taken down into the engineering spaces, but many of them joined their Royal Navy counterparts with their rifles and automatic weapons. So you can imagine the fuselage that was just coming from that ship. So you could see what's on fire. You could see the building. I mean, these are photographs that were taken from Venomous at the time.
Yeah. Who was the one with the camera?
He was. I've got his name. Good
I'm
question.
sorry. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like
Well,
that.
that's all right. It's in the book.
You think
Yeah.
about, I guess it brings two questions to my mind. First of all, so you've got these, it was British soldiers that come on the ship. Now, do the sailors say, look, get the hell out of the way, we got work to do? Or do they say, yeah, hell yeah, keep, do what you can, fire?
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, I,
And plus, think about it. All of them, many of them are being pushed down into the engine room,
right.
down below decks. Others were staying on top. Venomous in 20 minutes took 500 guardsmen off the ship, onto the ship. Now,
So-
Venomous now is severely overloaded.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now-
So they even if the sailors wanted the guardsmen out of the way, there's 500 of them, so they couldn't. I mean, you're stuck with these guys on the deck everywhere.
Yeah, they're down on the deck. They're behind maybe the torpedo mounts, of taking cover.
Jeez.
Some of them are being exposed, as with the Royal Navy sailors,
Yeah.
and firing their weapons at the Germans. Now,
To give you an idea, Venomous has a crew of about 100, 125. So they have
about 150,
quadrupled.
actually about 180.
Okay. Oh, wow. But okay.
Now, if I can continue,
a lot of
like I said, it seemed like an eternity, but she was
Yeah.
only alongside for 35 minutes. But at that time, Midshipman Walter Wells, age 19, was lying prone on the ship's forecastle, maintaining a tension on the spring wire that was secured to the quayside. So there was only a single wire keeping Venomous alongside, but Macbeth was using her engines to keep the ship alongside the quay wall. So the combination of the spring line and the ship's engines kept Venomous up tight, allowing the guardsmen to come aboard. Now,
Wait a second. I know what a spring line is. So, so they only had one line
on the bow.
and it was in a spring. It was like in a spring formation from I guess like maybe an attachment point that would have been like parallel to the stern, and then they're gunning.
No. It was on the bow, and
it was on the bow,
attached to the bow, leading to a bollard from the bow forward. Don't forget the tide is going out. Venomous's bow is into the oncoming tide.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I was thinking of that the wrong way. Okay.
Well, anyway, we're just a little ahead of ourselves. Let me just finish what happened.
Oh, sorry. Let me back.
So he told the senior Army officer, "I can't take any more. I got to get out of here." He orders the engine room full astern, but the rudder jams to starboard.
Oh, you got it.
So here is Venomous. Visualize it, going full astern, using her engines, using her starboard engine ahead, port engine astern, vis-a-vis. He is steering his ship out backwards out of that harbor with just his engines. With everything, all hell is breaking loose. Everyone is firing, and you can just imagine what it was like. Mm-hmm. The ship was riddled with bullets, and oh, by the way, not one man was hit.
What?
That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I mean, again, talking about how narrow the channel is, and not one person was hit.
And so she swung around when she cleared out, and she raced at 30 knots back to Dover with her engines. The rudder jammed hard to starboard. Okay, now next one.
Well, wait, how did they get back to Dover? They repaired the rudder, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
She had a few days, whatever, because guess what happens next? That photograph was taken from Venomous, showing the beachfront, Bray Beach, north of where? Dunkirk. Now, she would come through this harrowing experience, but it was just the beginning. They would join the many other ships and craft, many of her V&W destroyers. They would begin the evacuation of Dunkirk, and she was ordered to go east of Dunkirk to Bray Beach. Next picture. There she is. A photograph was taken of her. You could see the nets on the right side. So she was ordered to go to the beach to begin pulling off British soldiers. Now, this was shown to be extremely inefficient. So her first run, she took a couple of hundred servicemen off and made her dash across to Dunkirk. Now, she was then ordered into the harbor. So her next run went into the harbor, into Dunkirk. It was Lieutenant Kearshaw. He's the gentleman who took photographs.
Okay. He was the crazy photographer.
Yeah.
Okay. While everyone else is shooting and being shot at, he had the wherewithal to take pictures.
That's right. Oh, by the way, and you were forbidden to take personal photographs.
He wasn't even like an official photographer or anything like that?
No. He had his own camera.
You had mentioned the nets. That's what we're seeing here on the. Wait, let me blow this.
You can see it right there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear.
So they realized it was inefficient, and if you remember the movie Dunkirk, they're being ordered to go off the beach to go to the port itself. So what happened was, after making 2 daylight runs, the losses in shipping and men was becoming just too horrendous. And so Vice Admiral Ramsey ordered that relief of Dunkirk would only be done at night. Now think about it. This is summer, and you know how late it gets up north. So what you're about to see, she made night runs into Dunkirk. Next one. Get the full. This is a photograph taken by Kearshaw the day that Venomous, one of the 2 runs that she made going into Dunkirk. Next one.
Next one.
That gives you an example of what it was like for the ships to go alongside to pick up the soldiers.
Wow.
That's shown. That was described very well in the movie Dunkirk.
Mm-hmm.
And Commander Gatto is there somewhere. Next. Oops. There we go.
Okay.
That photograph was taken twilight. There's the soldiers waiting to come down. You could see the tide has dropped, and the soldiers literally had to jump down onto Venomous's forecastle. One soldier missed and went straight in between the ship and the wall, and never came up.
Which is literally what they portrayed at one point in the movie.
That's right.
Yeah. And this picture, well, just kind of proves that.
Yep.
I mean, they're all just standing there.
Well, they're waiting to jump on.
Yeah.
So anyway, you could see the Lewis gun on the port bridge wing.
Oh yeah. Right there.
Yep. She would continue to make night runs, and then she would survive the Operation Dynamo. And in doing so, she rescued over 4,400 men.
Jesus.
How many runs?
She made 5.
5.
Her last run was 1,400 men, French soldiers.
1,400?
1,400 on her last run.
What?
You can imagine she was so top heavy.
Yeah.
She could only make it straight. She could not zigzag. Just like in Boulogne, she couldn't zigzag. She was too top heavy.
Oh
You
my
mean
God.
yeah? So the slightest turn in a zigzag and the ship would roll over.
There's a very good
You
chance.
gotta
of
have guys
losing
up
that.
on the mast at that point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There was probably like guys hanging on to the stacks.
Hanging on to everything. Yep.
Wow.
Next one, please.
Yes.
Okay, now Venomous would survive, but her role would change to that of an ASW escort destroyer. And she would be commanded by another able officer on the lower left, Commander H. Pitcairn Henderson. Interesting name. And you could see the photograph in the upper right. You could see the modifications that are taking place. Her after torpedo tubes have been replaced by a 4-inch high-angle gun. Her after mount was taken off. Extra depth charge throwers were put in. And you could see she is beginning to change.
Mm-hmm.
The photograph in the lower right is a photograph taken in Londonderry that shows some minesweepers. But she would wind up being stationed in Londonderry, and then she would make convoy runs going west to Canada, coming back to Ireland, and back to England. So she would continue doing that through 1940, 41, up through 42. She almost had a near miss. She was on her way into Liverpool after one convoy escort, and she ran over a German magnetic mine. She was taken out of action for about 4 months, but she came back looking like that you see there.
So explain to me, sir, what I'm looking at with the stacks. I don't know much about the Royal Navy, but you have the larger funnel, narrower, and then a shorter, stockier funnel.
Right.
What's the deal with those?
Well, she had actually 3 engines.
Okay.
The forward thin stack supplied the exhaust for the forward engine and boilers, and then the smaller squatted one for the 2 others. So that's what she did. In fact, the Royal Navy nicknamed those thin funnels on the V&Ws Woodbines. In other words, Woodbine cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
They would call them Woodbines. So that's how the Royal Navy sailors would identify a V&W. Oh, here comes a Woodbine.
Good.
So
good,
for the
good
after stack, the stumpier, shorter
Yeah.
one, they're bringing 2 engineering spaces into one funnel.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
No, that's a good question.
They weren't bad-looking destroyers.
They were
No.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful ships. You can see the design had the design influence for destroyers up through the 20th century.
Indeed.
Okay.
Probably wearing a blue camouflage too, maybe, or something like that. Like
Different,
that
a blue, a gray, and a white.
Yeah, the
Dirty
fire
white,
blue
yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she's making speech. Okay. Anyway, so what happened was in early 42, she would be commanded by another able commander, CO. His name was Hugh Falcon Stewart, and that's him on the left. Now, that ship that you see there is a destroyer leader based on the same design. Now, what happened was in December 1942, on their way back off Northern Ireland, she was accidentally rammed by the destroyer group's flagship, and she survived. She almost sank. In fact, you see her along quarterdeck. The water was about 3 feet below the after line. That's how much water she took on. But she survived, and she came out with additional modifications. That's her in the Mediterranean, as you can see. Her B mount is still there, but you don't see A mount. What you see there is Hedgehog. She now has the Type 271 radar, surface radar, on top of her bridge. And she has additional depth charge throwers. So she is truly an ASW escort, a high-speed escort. Because, I mean, she could still do 32 knots.
Wait,
so
anyway, the hedgehogs would be right here, right?
Yeah, right forward, yeah.
Okay.
Just below the B mount.
Which is right there.
And notice her pennant number has changed. It's no longer D for destroyer, it's I-75.
Oh, it is.
And note the change in camouflage. She has a darker gray, blue hull and a whiter upper works. Now what happens, she was also involved with the first Anglo-American Russian convoy, PQ-15. So she went back to Russian waters that she had first encountered, if you would, back in 1920.
Oh, the Baltic, the Baltic area.
Baltic was it gets pretty cold. Anyway, could you go to the next one, please?
Sure.
Okay, now under Falcon Stewart, Venomous would continue operating out of Derry, and then in August 1942, she would re-enter the Mediterranean as part of Operation Pedestal, the famous convoy that saved Malta. And Venomous formed part of the escort force. And from her decks, we can see an old friend of hers, which is HMS Eagle, on her death roll after she had been torpedoed by U-73. That's, in fact, in the 1920s, HMS Venomous was HMS Eagle's plane guard when Eagle was conducting flight operations. But here, Lieutenant Kershaw took this photograph of Eagle on her death roll.
You're talking about this image right here.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's Eagle sinking. Yeah. She received
She was-
4 torpedoes on her port side. Now, anyway,
She was a carrier.
huh?
She was a
Just,
carrier.
She was a
yeah, she was
carrier.
a carrier.
Okay.
In fact, Operation Pedestal had the largest concentration of Allied aircraft carriers since the Battle of Midway.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, but she was lost, and the photographs that you see down at the bottom, Venomous takes on board over 500 survivors from HMS Eagle and rushes back at 30 knots. Oh, by the way, she couldn't zigzag. She had to go straight.
What? Why? Because again of all the.
She was top heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
Should have been reclassified as a troop ship at this point.
Yeah. No
you
kidding.
can tell me that. She's done
Do you
her
notice
troop.
a theme here, gentlemen? Do you notice
Yeah.
a theme?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Connor, thanks for pointing out Eagle was a carrier because I was thinking of like.
She was a converted battle cruiser.
Yeah. No. There was an
She's
Eagle.
the first generation of aircraft carriers for the Royal Navy.
Yeah. But there was an Eagle in the book that Greyhound was based on.
That was an escort ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was
Eagle,
the.
so- yeah. Thanks for. I was just saying thanks, Connor, for pointing that out because I was getting.
In Greyhound, Eagle was the code word for, I believe, a British destroyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to look at the movie again.
Yep.
So anyway, then next slide, please.
Next slide coming right up. Okay.
Okay. Now on November 10th and 11th, 1942, while escorting 2 destroyer depot ships to Gibraltar during Operation Torch, Venomous and a brand new destroyer, HMS Marne, were attacked by one of Hitler's prominent U-boat aces. You can see his photograph on the right. His name was Werner Henke, and he commanded U-515. And in fact, that is U-515 under attack in 1944, when he survived, as well as about 30 of his men. They were sunk by Admiral Gallery's hunter-killer group, and Henke became a prisoner of war. And that's a story in itself.
Huh.
Anyway, Henke successfully sank Hecla. Henke sank Hecla and badly damaged the destroyer Marne. In fact, blew her stern off. So here it is this night. Venomous is circling around the crippled Hecla. The other destroyer depot ship takes off. Here she is defending her two damaged consorts, pulling out men out of the water and attacking Henke, because Henke comes back and shoots more torpedoes into the poor Hecla, blows the stern off of HMS Marne, and here's Falcon Stewart attacking Henke, forcing her back down and damaging her so badly that Henke has to withdraw. But during this whole evening and through the morning hours, Venomous rescues 500 men from Hecla and 50 men from Marne. Guess what he has to do?
Go back to Londonderry.
No, he's ordered to go back to Gibraltar, but he
In a straight
realizes
line.
he does not have enough petrol in the tank to get there. But with his navigation officer and engineering officer, they realize they just barely have enough fuel to make it into Casablanca, not knowing whether Casablanca has been liberated. So here she is in the morning, the 11th of November, that afternoon, she is relieved by 2 Canadian Flower-class destroyers,
Corvettes.
who in turn tow poor old Marne to Gibraltar. She takes off at best only at 12 knots, the most economical speed. She arrives on the 12th of November that morning. Casablanca had just been liberated, and pulls alongside the flagship of the U.S. fleet, the USS Augusta, and unloads 500 men on board the Augusta. And there's some incredible photographs of that. The next day, after the men are fed, showered, put on U.S. Navy uniforms, she speeds a straight line to Gibraltar with those 500 survivors, as well as men who succumbed to their wounds. And there's several photographs in the book that show the burial party. They buried about a half a dozen men from Hecla at sea on their way to Gibraltar.
So for this U-boat captain that you're showing on the right here,
Yeah.
he was highly he was a prominent figure in the book Black May. Is that correct?
I believe so. He winds up as a prisoner of war. He's a prisoner of war at a very secret location outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia, just down from our home in Burke, Fort Hunt. Fort Hunt was a special POW camp that had high officials, German Nazis, U-boat commanders, prisoned there. Now you can imagine having a U-boat commander surviving commander was like hen's teeth. It's a long story about what happens to Henke, but he commits suicide by guard.
Oh, really?
And he's buried in the German plot in Fort Meade Cemetery in Maryland.
Wow.
A story in itself. Anyway, so what happens next one, please?
There we
We're
go.
almost finished.
Ooh, Mark 5.
There she is, just behind HMS Implacable, making a run, and you could see these modified Spitfires. This is in the Mediterranean. She's escorting this a Victoria-class carrier, and these are Royal Air Force Mark V Spitfires. They're going to be flown off and join the Royal Air Force squadrons in Algeria.
Wait a second. What was the carrier's name?
Which I think it was Implacable.
Implacable, but the Implacable. It was transporting these planes. These Spitfires weren't flying off the deck.
Yes.
Were they?
Yeah, they flew off the deck.
Yes, they were.
What?
They just couldn't land again.
I was going to say with a nose like that, there's no way they'd be able to see. That was the same problem that the Corsair had. And I'm looking at these Spitfires. It's like there's no way that could be.
Well, they were the Implacable was used as a ferrying, so they would fly them off to air bases, just like they did with relieving Malta. In fact, HMS Furious that Venomous was escorting during Operation Pedestal had 35 Spitfires that were flown off and flown to Malta.
Yeah.
They flew, I think, about 200 miles or so.
Wow.
Should be noted that.
Go ahead, Connor.
Sorry, it should be noted that USS Ranger CV4 also transported these modified Spitfires to Malta and North Africa as well.
Yeah, that was early in 42.
Yeah.
A Pedestal was in August 42.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she continued in the Mediterranean. She continued escorting convoys along the North African littoral, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and back and forth, as well as she would escort convoys that were made up of Operation Husky, which was the invasion of Sicily in 1943. Now, by that time, she is absolutely broken down.
Yeah.
She's down to one boiler, and she limps back to England at about 15 knots. And there she's placed on the mud flats in Falmouth to await being modified again. Can you turn the page, please? Turn it.
Yeah, bear with me a second here. Okay.
So that photograph up top is her. Look how she's stripped down. She's converted into a target ship in which she was training Royal Navy Barracuda Squadron in torpedo firing exercises. So she would have mats along her side, and she was at the time stationed in the Isle of Man. And she would basically maneuver, and the Buccaneer torpedo aircraft would fire their dummy torpedoes at her.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she also became a target ship on the East Coast, and she was sailing out of Rosyth, which is the port opposite Edinburgh. And there, on May 8th, actually May 9th, she and her sister Valoris went to Kristiansand and took the surrender of the German Navy Group North. And there's her photograph of her sitting in the harbor, and there is a Norwegian fishing boat, and there are dozens and dozens of Norwegians on board, just partying like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, she only spent that day with her sister ship taking the surrender of the German Navy command. And the next day she was ordered straight back to Rosyth and the Greymouth. And there, the following day, she was decommissioned.
Wow.
The following day.
Yep, upon her return, which is, I think, about the 12th, the 13th of May. Immediately decommissioned.
And where was this picture taken again? This one, the lower one?
Kristiansand in Norway.
And that's why she's got the Norwegian flag.
Yep, with the white ensign.
Yeah, okay. Huh.
So there she is. So she was sitting there, decommissioned with many of her sister ships, in the place that she left in 1939. And slowly but surely, she was scrapped. In fact, the last piece of Venomous was taken ashore in November of 1948, 1 month before my birthday, before I was born. So anyway, if you would, thus passed, as I said, a hard-fought ship.
So please tell me you have an actual count of the number of rescues that she did. You have 42.
6,500.
6,500. Oh my God. That is by far the most it has to be of
Now
any
think
Allied
about the rescue of those refugees out of Holland and their descendants as a microcosm. Think about, now I don't know how many of those 6,500 survived the war, but how many of them wound up having families, their children, their descendants. So you talk about something. So, she was all too typical of her sister V&W. She was common in the quality of her design. She was common in that two generations of Royal Navy men, regulars, reservists, hostilities only, retired, retained. They showed courage that was common as all of their fellows who served for that matter. Common courage in the face of an unforgiving sea and against a very determined enemy. Now, Venomous was a very hard-fought ship, but she was a very lucky ship.
Yeah.
I leave you with the final words, and it's from able seaman James Eaton, who said of his ship, quote, "She was a happy ship, and I was very proud to have served in her. I would do so all again. Good old Venomous." End of quote.
Very nice. Here's a question from a
Thank you, Joel. Thank you.
From James. Can you address that?
Okay. The closest equivalent would have been, think of the Farragut class, the Mahan class destroyers, built in the 20s.
Okay.
They had the raised forecastle, lower quarterdeck. They had superimposed 5-inch guns. Yeah, if you could find a Farragut or a Mahan class, yeah, they were the closer equivalents.
Yeah, I was thinking of the
other
Mahan
classes like the ships like the Blue, single stack. They had the raised forecastle and the superimposed gun mounts. And then with the introduction of the Fletcher, class, that's when we went to basically flush deck design. The Fletchers, the Sumners, the Gearings. All the other ships, the classes prior to that, the hull lines were very similar to Venomous and her sisters.
Fascinating.
So we've been talking,
anyway, gentlemen, that's about good old Venomous.
Well,
This painting is by my dear friend Peter Sue again. And I told him what the conditions were on that day, the 23rd, when Venomous pulled into Boulogne. So that's his rendition of her going into the harbor, and you could see the ship in the foreground. That is HMS Wild Swan.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredible, crystal clear evening on that day.
Amazing history.
Fantastic. It's such a unique story.
Yeah, we've been talking to Captain John Rodgaard, author of A Hard-Fought Ship, the story of the HMS Venomous. And I got to tell you, when we have authors on, and it's definitely a privilege to have the authors that we've had on from the Naval Institute Press, but I don't think we've had anyone tell quite the story that you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a bunch of images that we're thrilled to have, no doubt about it, to present. But then you actually had this all laid out. You told the story. I found it fascinating. So I definitely want to thank you for putting the time into it and tying it all together, because I thought it was an incredible story. A story that I'd never heard before.
Well, what was I think what all led up to this, as I mentioned earlier, when Bill Foster died a little over 2 years ago, I was what can I do to honor his memory as well as Bob Moore? And I went to the publisher of Seaforth. His name is Julian Mannering. And the reason why is my wife and I are editors of the 1805 Club's annual, the Trafalgar Chronicle, and he publishes that. And I asked Julian, I said, I would very much like to publish this again, and in honor of my two dear friends. And he took a look at the manuscript and went, "My God, this is incredible." And he didn't hesitate one iota. And 500 copies were produced. Now, unbeknownst to me, last month, I was just typing in hard-fought ship to see how it was doing. And guess what popped up? Naval Institute Press. And I didn't realize that the press took on the book. Not to publish, but they're carrying the book. I was just flabbergasted.
Nice.
Well, like I said, it's a fascinating story, and
then that's how we got connected with you.
That's how we got connected.
Yeah. So for those of you that have enjoyed Captain John Rodgaard's story of the HMS Venomous, if you are at all interested in a copy of the book, no matter what platform you're watching on tonight, if it's the YouTube channel for the USS Slater, the Buffalo Naval Park, or my channel History X, you will find in the description 2 links that'll take you, 1, to either the Naval Institute Press, or 2, to Amazon, where you can get a copy of the story of HMS Venomous, A Hard-Fought Ship.
If I may, you can also get it through Casemate as well as through Seaforth.
Can you say that one more time? You can get it through Casemate and what else?
And also Seaforth.
Seaforth?
Seaforth.
Seaforth.
F-O-R-T-H. Seaforth.
Okay, thank you for spelling that. Okay, I wanted to make sure we got that right.
Sorry.
So, before we let you go, Shane, John, Connor, any last minute questions is it okay if we call you Captain John?
Well, I've been called Captain Johnny Seafood Restaurant, but that's
we'll just go with Captain John. Go ahead.
Do you have anything else in the pipeline? Any more books?
Myself or
yes?
Connor?
Captain John Rodgaard. Do you have any more books in the works right now?
Well, I just came out with was last year Tail Ships, The Hunt for the Soviet Submarines in the Mediterranean, 1970-73.
Oh, that's good.
And
Well, that sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
I was. It's a story of the evolution of passive sonar, towed sonar, and as well as the story of the 3 destroyer escorts, their time in the Mediterranean with that piece of gear. And I was on one of those ships at the time.
Right, you said that earlier.
23 years old. Oh God. Was, anyway, that, and I'm also, when I'm looking at my duties as chairman of the 1805 Club, PASS, I am in the opening throes of putting together material to write the history of the Sixth Fleet.
What?
Oh, really?
That's what I
What?
want to do.
Oh my God. Well, for the Buffalo Naval Park, all of our vessels were attached to the Sixth Fleet that
That's
we
right.
have, and Little Rock was the
In
flagship.
fact, when I was in the Med, Little Rock was our flagship.
Wow.
If you need anything from our collections or archives, let me know. I talked to the Sixth Fleet, and we could talk offline, but I talked to the Sixth Fleet Association.
I'll see you at the conference in September.
Oh, you're coming? Great.
Fantastic.
I'll be on the panel. I'll be on the panel discussing anti-submarine warfare.
Nice.
Against the Soviet Navy.
So look forward to meeting you, sir.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Well, that was totally unintended. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome that you're going to be in Buffalo for the HINSA conference in September.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a nice comment from a member of the 1805 Club.
Good.
Dr. Jack Satterfield, who is a professor at the University of Delaware, and he's a member of our club. Watching a presentation when a word applies, stunning. Oh, thank you. That was very nice of John. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, Jack is former U.S. Navy. He was a destroyerman, if I remember correctly. And let's see. I got a nice comment from Mr. Pete Stark in Annapolis, who is our North American secretary. I'm sorry, our U.S. secretary of the 1805 Club. And he said it was a great talk. Thank you.
Oh, you mean he was watching this evening? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, watching this evening. Yeah.
Happy to have you with us. Definitely.
I do have one small question very quickly before we wrap up.
Go for it.
While doing the research for your book, did you do much in the way of basically not on location, but did you travel much to do research? Because there are still two World War II era British destroyers left in existence, HMS Cavalier and HMCS Haida. Did you visit either of those ships just to kind of get a feeling for?
Well, we were aboard Haida. We were aboard Haida last year.
Okay.
I was giving a presentation at the Royal Canadian Military Institute.
Okay.
And on our way to another conference in St. Catharines, we stopped to see Haida, but we couldn't get aboard because the temperature was so hot. No one could go aboard. It was like 90 degrees Fahrenheit at the time.
Yeah. So,
we've seen Haida. But with regard to materials, I pulled materials, for example, that diary from that unknown stoker I got from the National Museum of the Royal Navy. I received a lot of material from the history department of the Royal Navy in Portsmouth, also in Kew. But as I mentioned, in my first edition, the second edition of the book, I brought back from England 40 pounds of material, photographs, archival material that Bob had collected in the succeeding years from 1990 all the way up to 2007. And then after the book came out, Bill Foster and Bill was receiving. He has a great website. Unfortunately, it's still active. Well, I'm sorry, it's not active because Bill has passed. But just look up V&W Destroyers. It's a phenomenal webpage, absolutely phenomenal webpage, and it gives a rundown on all the V&W destroyers with photographs that you would never believe you've seen before. So that is also, if you would, material that was part of this book. You can see on this website.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
What was the website again?
It's V&W Destroyers.
V&W Destroyers. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should be able to pull it up. And it's really, really fantastic.
Well, retired Captain Rodgaard, John Rodgaard, it's been a thrill to have you on here. Like I said, to tell the story of the HMS Venomous. Story I had never heard before, but it was thrilling. If you guys are just tuning in now and you want to hear it from the very beginning, of course, it's going to be on all three YouTube channels, the Slater, Buffalo Naval Park, and History X. I enjoyed the story immensely. And, you hear stories about destroyers, battles, that type of thing. The rescue missions are more impressive than anything else.
I mean, isn't it something? I mean, it's also common that warships perform operations that they were never designed for.
Good point.
And when you think about that, and it's the men that at this time, through their own initiative, pull off things that were never in the mind's eye of the designers.
Let's see. Anna,
that's a major takeaway I think one would get from the book.
Anna wants to know if it's possible to get an autographed copy of your book. Would you be willing to go over to her house and sign the copy of her book?
Who's that?
That is Anna right here. She wants to know if you'll come to her house and sign her book.
Where does Anna live?
I don't.
Okay, don't Ken.
That's not my problem.
Well, she lives up in Buffalo. Sure.
No, let's see, Anna. We appreciate the question, but definitely, if anyone's interested in a copy of John's book, A Hard-Fought Ship: The Story of HMS Venomous, like I said a few moments ago, you can check out the description in the descriptions of each YouTube platform, the Slater, Buffalo Naval Park, or History X, and you'll see those links there.
I mean, we do have Captain John's email. If someone, if Captain, if you're okay with it, we can coordinate.
Oh, by the way, Shane, I plan to bring a couple of copies up to the conference, as well as the new book.
Fabulous.
And other books that I've got, the biography on Commodore Charles Stewart, as well as a book that I co-edited and wrote, North Americans in Nelson's Navy.
Oh.
So I plan to bring copies of those books up north.
North Americans in Nelson's Navy.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good one.
It's about those North Americans, Canadians, former colonial, Bahamians, Bermudians, Jamaicans, who served in the Royal Navy from basically 1776, 1793. Through 1837.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be pretty good.
Yeah, there are Canadians in there, Connor.
Oh, Captain John Rodgaard, it's been great having you on tonight. We look forward to seeing you at the HINSA conference in September.
Looking forward to it, gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no, thanks for coming on tonight. Really enjoyed it. And now, as we always do, we're going to kick you off and talk behind your back.
Okay, I'm going to have a tot of rum.
Yeah, well, you enjoy yourself down in Florida, and thank you for staying up late with us tonight.
Thank you all, gentlemen, very much. I
so
appreciate it. You
No,
really get,
we love hearing the story.
The book was a labor of love.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I can keep the memory of these men with us.
And you're talking to people that enjoy this kind of stuff. So again, thanks for sharing it.
Good night.
All right,
Good
you have
night.
a good evening. Okay. Well, that was interesting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, like I said, normally we get a jumble of images that I have to compile into a presentation, but he had all this prearranged, and it all told a story, and it just flowed. That was great.
Yeah,
I don't want to be critical of our previous guests and everything like that, but he outdid it. So.
Yeah, the other ones are more organic. Like it seems though this is a presentation that Captain John gives a lot, right?
Oh yeah. I'm sure.
So the other ones are just a little more organic than that.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's obviously a presentation he's done before, and you kind of got that feel, and it's like, all right, but then it quickly morphed into the story that I was glad he was able to tell, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I did too.
So like I said earlier, if you're just kind of joining us over, let's see, we're going on, Central Time, we're going on 9 p.m., almost 10 p.m. Eastern. If you're just joining us in the last 15 or 20 minutes, I strongly encourage you to check it out in the beginning, because he tells quite the story of a British destroyer that, quite frankly, I had never heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm out of line saying this, but we had, what was the name of the ship's engineer we had on for the Midway? Shane,
why can't I
think of his name? Santi.
Yeah, we all know who he is.
Lynn Santi is. No, it was
Len Santiago.
Len, that was it.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Jesus, that came out of left field.
So when we had
I
Len
did.
on, yeah, we and he's telling the story of the Midway, which was a ship more not necessarily known for its battle history, but more so for a rescue mission. Evacuating Saigon, and then here's Captain John Rodgaard talking about how this British destroyer is pretty much known for all of its rescue missions.
Yeah.
What do you say, like 6,500?
Yeah,
6,500.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
If you don't count all the people who basically descend from that 6,500.
Oh, good point.
Afterwards. So yeah. It made an impact. It made a considerable impact.
Yeah, and then you go back to this story within a story. Let me see if I can find this picture of. Yeah. So you go. Oh no, that's not the one. Where the heck was it? I'm sorry. Bear with me. Oh, you know what? I can't do it because I'm on the old slide. So I've got to do it this way. So you talk about the story within the story of this little boat. That's the only picture I can pull up of it right now. Yeah, this one right here. The story within the story. Yeah, I thought that was great about that little tiny boat that the four people had stolen.
Four teenagers
had stolen, and it's still floating to this day.
Yep.
I think, yeah, and these are the descendants from that, or some of the descendants from that.
Yeah, the woman in the middle is a descendant.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great story.
Did they say her mom was pregnant with her when they were on the boat? Is that what that was? Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, I knew nothing of that other action. I heard a little bit about Dunkirk.
Nope.
But Boulogne was it? I had no idea about. I
didn't know anything about that. Yeah, so that was pretty cool too. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did.
It was fun.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. Let's find out what's going on at the Buffalo Naval Park. Shane Stevenson, curator at the Buffalo Naval.
Yeah, sure. It's
go right ahead.
We had a busy weekend because it was Canada Day and 4th of July last week, so it was a busy weekend last week and into the weekend. This weekend is just as busy. We are having the Military History Preservation Group reenactors on board. They are embarking starting a little bit tonight and tomorrow. And then on Friday and Saturday, they're doing a mess call reenactment where they'll be cooking food in our galley, the enlisted mess galley on Little Rock, and offering it to our visitors. They're going to be doing general quarters, mail call, and just kind of bringing the ship alive. And then in addition to that, there's the Sea Cadets also on board this weekend. They're on board 7-8 times a year. And so, yeah, we're well into it now. Now, after July 1st, we start to see a lot of people every day because now it's vacation time and, all that stuff. So, and, we're still plodding along for the HINZA symposium. And, it's an exciting time.
Sounds like it.
Have you been hit with this hot weather, the 90 degree plus?
Yeah. I mean, you and I spoke, what was it, a week ago, and you were like, oh, God, it's 93 here, and then 91. Yeah. And that's up north where you're at.
Yeah, Minneapolis.
Yeah, and then like the next day, we got up to, I think 91 was the hottest day, but it's been about 8 days, 7 or whatever. We had and then it would, today was, or yesterday was 70. Mm-hmm. So, but we only hit about 91, maybe 92, in my area. I think more inland away from, because Lake Erie is, as we always say in Buffalo, Lake Erie is our air conditioner. Right, because all the breeze comes across at 280 miles or whatever. Okay. So we've never had a 100-degree day in Buffalo since it's been recorded, and rarely do we see into the 90s. But if we were 91, at Pierside, if it was 91 at work, I can only imagine inland it was maybe 95 or something like that, which is pretty rare. But yeah, we're excited about a lot of different stuff going on there, and we're working with the Slater now on that joint ticket for the Erie Canal 200th anniversary, and the challenge coins. So Shanna and has been really instrumental at the Slater doing that joint challenge coin ticketing. So it's been great.
Gotcha. Let's see. That's
Jesus, man, that's such an old picture. Come on, Ken. Now I'm looking in the canal side area in the backs. They just moved. That has to be a photograph from 2003. Why are we using that photograph?
Would you like to give me another one? Allow me to give you my email address if you would like to provide another one.
You
That
can
would be
dish, but
Ken-
you can't. You can
Ken
dish.
at historyxchannel.com.
Better
Okay.
yet, just wait. Ken, if you're going to go out there in September, just take an updated photograph.
You know what? I've got some great photos when I was there in December. I think I'm going to pull one of those up right now.
From the
Yeah.
radar?
Yeah, remember when Buffalo got hit with 4 feet of snow? I was there the week after. I've got.
Dish and take. Dish
I'm
and
gonna pull. I'm gonna pull one of those up.
So anyway, that's what's up with us. If you're ever around the neighbor, the Haida video we did.
Yeah.
Did great work with the Haida video. Loved working with the team up there, Danielle and Jared and Kurt and Sean. And we'll be doing a live session, which is uploaded already for July 23rd, just on our end, with Steven, myself, and then the team from Haida. So that was a great collaboration. We hope to do more collaborations with them. Anyway, that's good. Really excited. The year's going pretty well. Again, we're seeing a dip with Canadian visitors, which is, I guess, we were expecting. And that probably will continue through the rest of the season.
Can't say it. Shane Stevenson, curator at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval Military Park. Check out the website, buffalonavalpark.org. Connor, thanks for pulling that up. Perfect timing as always. And of course, check out their content on the YouTube channel. All you got to do is go into the space bar and search for Buffalo Naval Park, and it comes right up.
Yep.
Connor, good with the call outs there. All right, switching over to. Why am I having? Here we go. All right, John Epp, curator at the USS Slater in Albany, New York. What's going on, John? Oh, and by the way, John is there. He just doesn't have a camera going.
Again.
You are there, right, John?
I am here, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Go for it.
Catching up on cataloging collections, huge backlog there. We have been pretty busy with the large groups, just like Shane. Actually, tomorrow we have 150 people coming. And the ship's complement was like 180 to 200 in World War II, so it's going to be interesting. The heat wave has been getting us. It's easily 90 plus inside the ship by afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
It is not enjoyable whatsoever. I guess it's probably along the same lines as you, Shane. We have Tom Frezza from NHHC coming Saturday to do a similar activity. He'll be cooking out of our galley, making some meals, I believe, from the World War II cookbook. Actually, I have the menu right here. Baked bean sandwiches, cheese strats. I don't know what that is. Cucumber and onion salad, sliced pineapple, coffee, lemonade, and oatmeal cookies.
Wow, nice.
Sounds tasty.
I see the cigarettes were left off of.
Cigarettes and cigars for dessert, right? I always love that.
Yeah.
Hey, look at Anna. Look at Anna's comment here.
What?
Yeah, yes. There's a ship in Albany as well.
Oh, she didn't know that. Okay.
Rumor is they tried to get the USS Albany, the cruiser, after she was decommissioned, but that fell through pretty quickly. I don't know where they would have put her because of the draft, but
they probably could have squeezed her in somewhere.
Well, I would also think like what they had to do maybe with the Little Rock of like cutting the masts, right, to get like under.
Oh, to get under the bridge. Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that has those really tall platforms for their guided missiles.
Yep.
That really huge
Uh,
bridge. I mean, it's really awkward.
That would have been cool.
By the time
Yeah.
we meet again next month, it will have been the Coast Guard's birthday, so we'll have a small celebration down at the ship. There's possibility we'll have a Coast Guard cutter tied up alongside us, and the crew will take part in the ceremony. So
Very
it'll be a lot
cool.
of fun. If anyone is in the Albany area, birthday is August 4th. I think we're going to be celebrating the Saturday before. But I'll have to double check.
Nice.
And
Very
that's it.
great.
All right. John Epp, curator at the USS Slater. Yes, Anna, in Albany, New York.
Since
Hey, John.
1997.
Since
Yeah.
97. Hey, John, did you just really get a bad haircut here? I'm getting a little worried that you just don't want to.
No,
Did you
so
have a bad
my
haircut here or what?
my webcam broke a while back, so I've been bringing the camera from the ship and having to hook it up, blah blah blah. And I hate being on camera in the first place, so
Oh, okay.
adding in the extra step of having to bring the camera is just annoying.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
If you want to
So-
buy me a nice webcam, but go ahead.
Donate for John's webcam.
Oh, there you go.
USSslater.org/support if you would like to buy me a webcam.
Well, Skip's Happy Hour donated $10. I think
Yeah.
that was either to the Slater or the Buffalo Naval Park. So well on the way to getting you a new webcam. Let's see. So as I was saying, that's John Epp, curator at the USS Slater in Albany, New York. Check out the YouTube channel. Search for USS Slater in the search bar, or check out the website ussslater.org. And I haven't said it to this point, but I always like to remind people that absent of any kind of donations or anything like that, one of the easiest yet simplest and most effective ways you can support these guys is to like and subscribe to their content, on platforms like YouTube. If you're not a subscriber already, check out what they got going on and make sure you hit the like button as well. It goes a long way, and you probably don't realize this, but it goes a long way towards things like monetization, advertising dollars. YouTube pays these channels like, the Buffalo Naval Park and the Slater because they're monetized. So watch their content, become a subscriber if you're not already, and like, it just goes a long way to helping the algorithm direct
Absolutely.
more traffic to their videos. So support them online, support their social media efforts. Like I said, simple and effective.
Thank you, Mr. Stano. Appreciate it.
You got it. And finally, Connor, what's going on the museum ships community?
Well, hello everyone. Again, my name's Connor. I'm with museumships.us.
One of the administrators.
One of the administrators. To Anna Thomas, if you are interested in planning museum ship trips, recommend going to our website at museumships.us. We have an interactive map there which shows the locations of pretty much all the North American museum ships and well over half of the ones around the world. So I would highly recommend that. In the museum ship world at the moment.
Yeah, what's everyone bitching about?
Still the SS United States.
Really?
Yeah, it never ends.
Wow.
But no, things have been quite interesting, though. Of course, it's summer, which means it's tourism season, which means our Facebook group has been getting a lot of activity. Just today, like within the last 2 hours, we've had a guy post their pictures of visiting the HMS Victory and HMS Warrior and some photos of Laffy, and I'm pretty sure that's an AI post. But the big news of the day, I think, would be a post done by the Erie Maritime Museum. They just posted photographs of their U.S. brig Niagara, which is currently out of the water getting some major work done. So that's kind of the big news today. We're always talking about ships going to the dry dock. In this case, it's a wooden ship going to dry dock. And if you check our our Facebook group at Museum Ships, you will see that photo. It's right near the top at the moment. But that's kind of the big thing that's happening right now. As you all know, just one little side thing that I did find quite interesting that's happened since our last show was, as you all know, I used to be involved with the Canadian museum ship Alexander Henry, which was a Coast Guard icebreaker and buoy tender. And when I initially introduced that ship to you guys almost 2 years ago now, I brought up the fact that the Canadian Coast Guard was a civilian-run entity. They were run by the Department of Transportation. That is no longer the case. As of this summer, the Canadian Coast Guard is being transferred to the Department of Defense.
Uh-oh.
So
The U.S. Department of Defense?
the Canadian Department of Defense.
Oh, okay.
So there's going to be some major changes for the Coast Guard in the near future. So while I'm not involved with the Henry currently, I still found that really interesting, as it shows a fundamental shift in what the Coast Guard's been doing in Canada.
Canadian
Well,
Coast
what
Guard
is that? What is that
historically
ship?
not armed, right?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The Canadian Coast Guard historically, they're not an armed force.
So they're not generally armed. Their ships that go up into the Arctic will have weapons lockers, but the largest gun you'll see
For the
on
polar bears.
the largest gun,
Great Lakes.
On the Great Lakes, no. There's no weaponry
Will
on the
this
Great
change?
Lakes. Well, that would then fall under different treaties with the U.S. and Canada, so that would fall under other laws there. So I can't say to that, but up until now, the largest the Coast Guard had was 50 caliber machine gun on their fisheries patrol ships, but I can't say anything. But it does show an interesting shift in the Coast Guard. They're the largest maritime element of the Canadian government. They have about 120 vessels. So it's going to be interesting to see what changes now that they are in the position they're in.
Okay. Yeah, big news.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'd like to read more about what this shift actually represents. Is it in response to American administration, or what's the deal? Interesting.
Well, it's been something that's being pushed for a while, but I will say that situations that have happened recently have basically given that little bit of political push needed to see that actually happen.
I'm all for it. Yeah, I've got no problem with that at all. I think, put more guns on, or put any guns on a Canadian ship. Coast Guard. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't realize, or if you don't realize, when it comes to the Museum Ships Facebook group, which is a very popular Facebook group, Connor is one of the administrators.
Yeah.
So if you haven't made your way over to that Facebook group, Museum Ships, or to the website, strongly encourage it. There was a comment here when we were actually talking to John. Where was that? Oh yeah. So Anna, however you pronounce it, she asked, because I said becoming a subscriber, liking a video on YouTube, that kind of engagement helps the algorithm. And she asked, do hearts and happy faces on the lives help that? Absolutely. Any kind of engagement. Yeah, any kind of engagement, any kind of comment, even if it's a thumbs down, taking you behind the scenes a little bit, behind the velvet rope when it comes to YouTube. Any kind of engagement, even if it's negative, YouTube likes that. So
where the hell are the hearts here on this thing? I'm on StreamYard. Okay, so
yeah, you're on StreamYard right now.
Yeah, it has to go into the YouTube thing.
Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube, and I got to imagine it's going to be true on other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any kind of engagement, those platforms like that a lot. It's, even if it's negative, like I said a few moments ago, it just helps content creators get more attention. And when YouTube sees that kind of engagement and knowing that the viewers are going to stay on that platform versus going to another social media platform, they push that content to other people. So, like I said, taking you behind the scenes a little bit, but yes, any kind of engagement, positive or negative, helps a content creator. So keep it coming. All right, guys, let's see. So that's about it. Anything you guys want to add?
Nope.
This was and we had a lot of engagement tonight, so that's awesome. Thanks so much to everybody.
Yeah,
for checking in on this Wednesday.
And
first Wednesday of every month.
What?
Second Wednesday.
Yeah, second
there
Wednesday.
You go. Yeah, second Wednesday of each month. Make sure you tune in. I was trying to pull up Shane. I was trying to pull up the list to see what we got for next month.
I'm not going to remember. That's email from Sam was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
you know what?
But we'll
And
talk to Sam and get it taken care of. And
I thought I might. Yeah, so stay tuned. I'll get a community post out there to let you know what we got coming up for next month. But in the meantime, we were happy to have you on here. One last thing, a hard-fought ship, the story of the HMS Venomous by author Captain John Rodgaard. Check it out in the description below. You can find the links for Amazon and the U.S. Naval Institute Press.
The list I have is George Dewey and the Rise of the Navy, David Smith
What?
for
August? Oh my God, we're in August already? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's right, August.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, I want to pull this picture up because I really enjoyed having John on with us. Let's
Not
see.
that one.
No, this one right here. So, yeah. So, John Rodgaard and his co-author, Robert J. Moore, who is the gentleman that passed away that John was talking about earlier. Hard-fought ship, the story of the HMS Venomous. Fascinating story. Check it out. So, thanks again to him one more time for joining us this evening. My name is Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.